I wanted to quickly show how the validation works here and some of the limitations of Django's validation when it comes to forms. So this form was created from inheriting Django's model form and passing all the fields from the stock class, which was shown earlier. Now, if you look over here, there's a few cases of validation having its limitations. Actually, I'll get into that later. First, I'll show you how the validation works. So, if we enter a name here, leave an empty quantity, there'll be an error message that shows up here. Now for this, these are all valid data types for expiry. But if we enter something erroneous, red T, and if we enter price is a float field. But even if we enter an integer, this will be okay. It's 0.4. This should be okay too, because this is a float. Maximum though. So a valid data type would be like 36. An invalid for minimum stock would be like 1.5, because these are both integer fields, just like a quantity. Now if you look here, it says please fill in this field for the quantity field, which is empty. Now this is good because the form isn't submitted, and it won't be submitted if any of these fields are empty, which means that's one less thing we need to account for, and we don't need to write validation for that. So we fill in this quantity here and submit this. You can see that there's an issue with the minimum field, as we can see here, it's a float, which doesn't work, as you can't have 1.6 stock as a minimum. It has to be 1 or 2. It has to be a integer. So if we just change that to 12, for example, and cost over this hasn't raised any issues yet, because you can have 0.4 of a pound, 40 pence. Now we submit this, we can see that there's an issue now with the date, because red T is not a valid expiry date. This is a valid expiry form. We say the year 2027. T doesn't expire, but what T? T doesn't expire for quite a while, so this is fine. When we submit this, we can see that the T has been added here, and all of its attributes copied. And we see that price has been converted into a float. Cost is still a float. And yeah, everything else is alright. However, there's some cases where validation doesn't work exactly as planned. As we can see, there's a negative quantity here, which is an integer. However, in our database, in our table, negative quantity doesn't make sense. You can't have negative of something. So this is something that we need to account for, and we need to make sure that the user has to resubmit the form, or we can just disregard the form if there is a negative quantity. However, in terms of other cases of validation, we can see that if any of these fields are empty, we will resend the form. If the data type is invalid, we'll resend the form and ask them to input it. And if the data type is wrong, we'll ask them to resend the form too. So that's a lot of validation which is handled for us. Another case where it's not handled is the year. So if the year is like, let's say like 1000, the expiry can still accept that, which is obviously incorrect. You can't have an item which is 1000 years expired in this. That'd be disgusting. So obviously we'll create a means to handle that too. So yeah, we'll get to work on that.